It was exactly a month ago today that Congressman Todd Akin of Missouri brought the phrase legitimate rape into this year's political discourse.
If it's a legitimate rape, the female body has ways to try to shut that whole thing down.
And Todd Akin said that on local TV last month. He had been ahead of Claire McCaskill in Missouri's U.S. Senate race for months. Todd Akin was heavily favored in that race. After those comments, in the latest polling, he is down by 6. In the days following the debut of Mr. Akin's fake science theory about rape and pregnancy, Republicans were tripping all over each other in a rush to condemn him or call on him to drop out of the race. And while you could see why nobody would want to be associated with what Todd Akin said, here is an important thing about everybody calling on him to get out of the race and condemning him on the Republican side. Absolutely zero of these national Republican candidates calling on him to get out of the race were going to be on the same ballot with Todd Akin this year. Todd Akin is running a statewide race in Missouri, but that means he's on the ballot in Missouri and nowhere else in the country. So while it makes sense for Republicans, even in places like Massachusetts and Wisconsin and North Dakota, it makes sense for them to be saying, please don't think of me when you think of that Todd Akin guy. Republicans in those other states are never going to share the ballot with Todd Akin this fall, right? Republicans' Todd Akin problem is not that bad. He is only on the ballot in Missouri. But now Republicans have a Mitt Romney problem. And a Mitt Romney problem is national. His problem holds true for every Republican candidate in every race across the country in November, from dog catcher up to senator. Every Republican who's running for office shares a ballot and shares an R next to their name with Mitt Romney this year. And Mitt Romney, as you know, has spent the last couple of days trying to find a more elegant way to call 47% of the country, the working poor and young people and the elderly in this country, trying to find a more elegant way to call them irresponsible and entitled. More elegant than the way that he said it in his secretly recorded comments to a room full of $50,000 a plate donors, when he said that his campaign was not even trying to connect with the 47% of Americans who do not pay income taxes and who he therefore sees as dependent and victims and not responsible citizens. And you can see the political effect of the Mitt Romney problem already, even 47 days from the election. As Mr. Romney has been dropping in the polls, so have been Republican Senate candidates. Just this month, just during the calendar month of September, the folks at Real Clear Politics have moved 3 races further out of Republican reach. The Wisconsin Senate race, which they had considered a Republican-leaning race, is now considered a toss-up between Tommy Thompson and Tammy Baldwin. Both Ohio and Michigan, which previously had been rated by Real Clear Politics as toss-ups, those have both been moved. Both Ohio and Michigan have been moved into the leans Democratic column. After mostly running neck and neck for months, polling out of Virginia this week shows Democrat Tim Kaine 7 points ahead of George Allen. After months of polling mostly behind Republican Senator Scott Brown in Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren is up by 5 points in the latest poll out there this week. It is the 4th straight poll showing her in the lead. And in Connecticut, after briefly ceding the polls to Republican Linda McMahon, Democrat Chris Murphy is back in the lead in Connecticut polling out this week as well. If it was worth it for Republicans, particularly Republicans running for office this year, to flee from Todd Akin, with whom they are not sharing a ballot, it is definitely worth it for these same Republicans to apparently flee from Mitt Romney. Republican strategists warning in the Hill newspaper today that the Mitt Romney's fumbling campaign could cost Republicans in a number of down-ballot races. One strategist working on Senate races saying, quote, if Romney doesn't improve, that could cost us our chance of picking up the Senate for sure. Honestly, I don't know who's driving the train, but they need to get their message focused. And we are now seeing some of those candidates who stand to maybe lose an otherwise close race, thanks to Mitt Romney calling half the country a bunch of lazy moocher bums. We are seeing those Senate candidates flee from Mr. Romney and his rhetoric, at least on this issue. Republican Senator Scott Brown in Massachusetts saying that Mr. Romney's vision of 47% of Americans as dependent and entitled is, quote, not the way I view the world. Senator Dean Heller, running for re-election in a tough race in Nevada, likewise saying he does not view the world the same way Mitt Romney does. Linda McMahon, the wrestling mogul who is running for Senate in Connecticut, she says she disagrees with Mr. Romney. Mark Meadows, who is running for Congress as a Republican in North Carolina, says that he is different from Mitt Romney. Ovid LaMontagne, who's running as a Republican for governor of New Hampshire, promising not to be a partisan governor in the style of Mr. Romney and his 47% speech. But here's maybe the biggest panic button that there is on the Republican side right now. It's from the Huffington Post today. A Republican operative working on congressional races, quote, warned that in key swing states, Mitt Romney's support in internal polling is well below that of Republican candidates in districts where the presidential nominee needs to get big support to have a chance at winning. This is the quote from the Republican operative. He is just well under all of our other guys, this Republican said. I'm very concerned. Think about what that means for a second. What they're talking about here is key districts in key swing states, ones where Mitt Romney really needs to win big in order to win that swing state. And Mr. Romney is underperforming the other Republicans who are going to be on the ballot in those areas. These are the places where Mr. Romney needs to do great. And in the internal Republican polling in those places, he is doing awful. And that speaks very poorly of his chances of carrying those swing states. But more ominously for the Republican Party, it means that the lower level candidates who are running for Congress in those districts are now having their own races endangered by virtue of the fact that they share a ballot with a man named Mitt Romney. Safe Republican districts are getting less safe because Mitt Romney is going to be on the ballot in those races too. How are the Republicans going to solve this problem? How are they going to solve this problem? The answer to that question is the answer to who comes out ahead in this year's elections and how they get there.